You know, every society on Earth is built on a kind of blueprint, right? A master plan that dictates how everything works. But we're not talking about steel and concrete here. We're talking about ideas, rules, and procedures. Today, we're going to look at the two dominant legal blueprints that literally shape the lives of billions of people.
So, let's just start with a really big question. What actually holds a society together? I mean, really, is it shared values, a common culture, the government? Yeah, those are all part of it for sure. But there's something running even deeper, something more fundamental at play.
And it turns out, the answer isn't just a big book of laws telling you what you can and can't do. No, it's the entire framework, the legal system itself. This is like the invisible architecture that structures how we interact, how we solve our problems, and even how we define our rights.
Here's the best way to think about it. A legal system is like a society's operating system. You know, it's the background code that runs absolutely everything, from how we buy a house to how we handle a crime. It's so much more than just the apps or the individual laws that we see on the surface. There's this fantastic definition from legal scholar John Henry Marmon. He calls it an operating set of legal institutions, procedures, and rules. Now, for me, that word operating is the key. It really drives home that a legal system isn't some dusty old book on a shelf. It's a living, breathing machine that's constantly running in the background of our lives.
So let's break that down into its three core parts. First, you've got the institutions. Think of these as the players in the game: the courts, the police, the lawmakers. Then you have the procedures. These are the rules of the game, how a trial actually works, or how a new law gets passed. And finally, you have the rules themselves, the actual code, the formal laws and standards that tell us how to act. Okay, so that's the what. We get what a legal system is. But what about the why? What does the societal operating system actually do? What's its job description?
Well, its to-do list is pretty massive. It's there to maintain law and order, obviously, and to give us a peaceful way to sort out our disagreements. But it also does something way more profound. It protects our fundamental rights and, ideally, promotes a bigger sense of justice for everyone. And at its very core, it just sets the basic standards for how we all agree to behave.
All right, let's get into the first of the two major operating systems out there: common law. If you live in a place like the United States, the UK, Canada, or Australia, this is your system. And its defining feature? A deep, deep respect for the past. This right here is the absolute heart of common law. It's called the doctrine of precedent. It basically means that judges have to be part historian, part referee. They look back at how other judges handled similar cases, and those old rulings aren't just, helpful suggestions. They carry the full weight of law. This means a single powerful court decision can literally create a new rule without a single politician ever writing it down.
So, because it's all about interpretation and argument, you get a very specific kind of trial. In the common law world, the courtroom is a contest. It's what we call an adversarial system. Think about pretty much any courtroom drama you've ever seen on TV. That's this system. You have two opposing sides, each one making their case as powerfully as they can. The judge, or maybe a jury, sits in the middle like a neutral referee, just making sure everyone plays by the rules. But, and this is the critical part, the judge's final decision doesn't just end that one case. Their ruling becomes a new precedent, a new piece of the legal puzzle that future judges have to look at. It's how the law actually evolves. Okay, let's totally switch gears and look at the other major system, civil law. This is the one you'll find all over continental Europe, Latin America, and huge parts of Asia. And its philosophy is completely different. Here, you can forget about the past. It's all about the code. So instead of digging through old court cases, civil law looks to one main source: codified statutes. The law is all systematically collected and written down in these comprehensive legal codes. If you want to know what the law says, you don't start with what a judge said 50 years ago, you start by opening the code book.
And you guessed it, a totally different source of law leads to a totally different kind of trial. The civil law system isn't a contest between two fighters. It's an investigation. It's an inquisitorial system.
See, in this system, the judge isn't a passive referee just watching from the sidelines. No way. They're more like the lead detective. Their main job is to actively investigate the case and uncover the facts. They'll question witnesses themselves to get to the truth, which is why juries, which are so central to common law, are much, much rarer here. Okay, so let's put these two side by side. This is where it all clicks. The source of law? In common law, it's past court decisions. In civil law, it's the written code. That completely changes the judge's role from an impartial referee to an active investigator.
which, of course, changes the trial type from a contest, adversarial, to an investigation, inquisitorial. And maybe the biggest difference of all is the power of precedent. In common law, a past ruling is binding. It has to be followed. But in civil law, it's only persuasive. It's a suggestion. But the written code always wins.
Now, it's really important to remember that while common and civil law are the two heavyweights, they're not the only players in the game. The world of law is incredibly diverse.
So, super quick, what else is out there? Well, you've got religious law, where rules come directly from sacred texts like the Quran and Islamic law. You also have customary law, which is built on the unwritten, long-held traditions of a specific community, often in indigenous cultures. And of course, in our globalized world, tons of countries have created hybrid systems, mixing and matching elements to create something totally unique to them.
So, if you take one thing away from all this, it should be this. A legal system is so much more than a list of do's and don'ts. It is the entire operating system. It decides who holds power, how we define truth, and how our society functions. Day in and day out. It literally shapes our reality.
And that leaves us with one final thing for you to think about. Whether you live under common law, civil law, or something else entirely, just take a second to consider it. How does that specific legal operating system, the one where you live, shape your world every single day?